I said, you're looking very handsome.
Good afternoon, gentlemen and gentler of men. Chief, how are you?
Good.
Mr. Paris, can you hear me?
I can hear you loud and clear, Chief.
Bishop, that's why you can't hear you.
I have to change this setup. Gentlemen.
Right?
Hello,
Hi. Rod, are you there?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Neil?
Yes, I am. Roddy, what's going on, buddy?
Yeah, man. It's been too long.
I know.
How's Precious?
Well, she's precious, baby.
Okay.
Gentlemen.
All
How's my
right.
girlfriend? I miss her
Nigel.
missives from the Pomeroon. Tell her she's got to go back.
Well,
All right, gentlemen. Guyana at 50, it's Crossroads, and it's Diaspora. Guyana's Crossroad, one leads to exclusivity and status quo of the past, the other to a decent and inclusive modern state. The question is, should Guyana's diaspora be part of the calculus? Neil, you're on camera. You might as well take this one.
Gentlemen, good evening. Hope everyone is well.
yes.
Look, here are the challenges as I see it. Guyana is one of the few countries, maybe the only country that I'm aware of, that has negative population growth. When I left Guyana in 1976, I think the population was about 750,000. Today, it may be about the same, maybe a little less. And that's a problem. So the reality is, I do a lot of work for the Census Bureau in the U.S. And the reality is there are more Guyanese living abroad than living in Guyana. So why waste it? They have valid skills, capabilities, and they have a lot of entrepreneurs. And frankly, many of them are at that point and place in their lives where, they're pretty much done with the 9-to-5 grind, and what's on their mind is, Guyana was good to me. How can I help?
Nigel?
Well, the short answer to your question is really the diaspora is absolutely critical part of Guyana's development. I really don't think we should think of the diaspora as being separate from the Guyanese who remain.
Nigel, you might be a little far away from your microphone.
Sorry. Yeah. Well, I'll come a little closer.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome.
I was saying, yeah. Is this better?
Yeah, that's better.
Yeah. I was saying that the diaspora is a critical part of Guyana's development. Absolutely. If you were to take an assessment of where the skills are located for Guyanese or persons of Guyanese birth or the descendants of Guyanese, a significant part of that of those skills are located outside of Guyana. So if you were to look at the development of Guyana as an overall project involving all of its citizens, whether those who are here or those that are overseas, absolutely, the diaspora is critical to that. On this program, you've got Kojo. I was in school with Kojo. You've got Kojo's cousin. Just look at the grades of the people that graduated at our time. To start with, 80 to 90% of them are not in Guyana, which means that we have lost the best part of our student population who are now overseas. So I don't think the discussion should really be whether or not the diaspora is an essential part. I think that's a given. The discussion perhaps is how we engage all the skills that are available in the Guyanese pool globally to advance the development of Guyana.
That's the question. Nigel, the last time you were here, or at some point, you made that case that most of our skills, physical. Guyana is really is having a problem socially in that most of our skills are abroad, and if there is change, this was before the election. If there's change and Guyanese have a commitment, then this is something that we should really capitalize on. There has been some changes. There's the change of government. And based on what we are seeing in cyberspace, based on the chat, it seems as though more and more Guyanese are eager to give back or to return in some form or the other. What are your thoughts today?
Oh, I think, well, probably going to put myself in trouble again. I believe we've had a change of government, but I think what Guyanese want to see is a change in the systems. Just to go back to a point you were making, 80% of this discussion group here, 4 of the 5 of us don't live in Guyana. I'm perhaps the only one here at the moment. Rod has just left. He was here up to a couple of months ago. And I chose Kojo and his cousin Patrice as 2 particular examples because I was in school with them. And those are some of the finest products that came out of Saints. And they're not here. We have lost where we are losing. We haven't lost. We are losing the best part of their lives as they contribute elsewhere. And the reality is that I think we've had a change in government, but we have not really started to have a real discussion on the change in the systems that operate in Guyana. And my concern is not so much changing the government. There's no point in changing the government if you're keeping the same old systems that have led us into difficulty. The real challenge for moving the country forward is what proposals do we have to fundamentally change the structure of Guyana? Because if we're honest with ourselves, we have totally underperformed for 50 years. You can seek to put the blame wherever you wish to put it, but at the end of the day, we have to start with that conclusion. And the only way we can begin to rectify that inadequacy is by commencing to have a real discussion on what it is that we need to change so we can move the whole project Guyana forward. Now, in terms of the diaspora coming back, I think a lot of that discussion used to be very emotional. The reality is that a lot of people, once they get into another system, are not physically going to come back. But with the technology now, nobody needs to come back, as in permanently come back, because we can benefit from your contribution without actually being here. So to answer your question, yes, we've had a change of government. I haven't yet seen fundamental changes in the structure or an enthusiasm towards changing that. A lot of that may well be due to the fact that we're not a year out of the election, and we are trying to recover from a very long period of the old system. But I hope that begins to address the question that you had posed to me.
Mm-hmm. If all things considered, and we have some of these systems in place and some of the infrastructure to encourage diaspora, either repatriation or participation in some way. Here's a big question. Can this 83,000 square miles of complication become the pioneer for the region on feeding, clothing, and housing itself?
That's addressed to my colleagues or to me.
Anybody. I would like Rod to jump in on this one.
Yes, I'd be happy to chime in a little bit there for you, Selwyn. As Nigel just alluded to, I had been living in Guyana for the past 2 years. Returned to London in June of last year. Anyway, I am part of the British Guyanese diaspora. But having lived in Guyana, having experienced the Guyanese enthusiasm and the way of life, which I had somewhat forgotten. Yes, I went to Queen's College with my dear friend Neil, but like him, we have been living overseas and didn't really know what it was like to live back in Guyana. It was a wonderful feeling. So coming back to the United Kingdom, my thought is, let's spread the word. Let's let the folks know that there is a future in Guyana. I had the pleasure of seeing a presentation by Stanley Ming. Everyone should go and check it out. It was, I think, Nigel, you might know it.
Yeah, Guyana 21.
Yeah. And Stanley set a roadmap for Guyana, which I do believe the current coalition government is embracing. There are bits of it that seem to be coming out from time to time. I can't go through it all. It's quite extensive, but it will put us on a trajectory to a good future. One only has to look at what happened in Singapore. Our countries are somewhat parallel, but they are just a rock, as Stanley said. They do not have the resources that we do in Guyana. but they have gone leaps and bounds way beyond what we could ever imagine. No reason why we can't get there. Their people are just as diverse as we are, but they're all Singaporeans. They're not Afro-Singaporeans or Indo. They're all from Singapore, as we should all be, just Guyanese, working towards the future.
Rod and Kojo, why do you guys bother to go back to Guyana?
Oh well, I have a strong love for my country. My heritage is in the Pomeroon, and I love going back there. It's so tranquil and peaceful, and the family have a business there as well. But really, it's a time for me to regroup and know my roots, which we should never forget. And I feel so sorry when I encounter children of the diaspora here in the United Kingdom that just don't know what Guyana is all about. And they hear the negatives, and they really make it out to be what our country isn't. You know, they may hear of somebody getting robbed here or an accident that happened here, but it's no more than it happens in any other major country. So Guyana should not be panned the way it has. It has a wonderful future. I'm here in the UK because my wife and I have a property here, and we have things to do, but I'm doing whatever I can for our very large diaspora in the United Kingdom.
Uncle Joe, you visit Guyana quite frequently. Why do you bother to go back?
You know, firstly, hi to all my colleagues, and it's been very interesting listening in on the conversation, and also pretty inspiring. And Nigel, I hadn't realized internal democracy in the coalition ran so deep. I'm interested in your comments around the system changing, but we should probably have that discussion offline. But congratulations. But why do I go back? Well, I'll tell you why. Because if you know my father, if you know my family, you grew up with an indelible sense of service and belonging. I still travel after 30 years of being outside of Guyana on a Guyanese passport, despite the options to do differently from a number of countries. I'm a resident of 4 or 5 different countries, but I've refused to trade in my Guyanese passport. I can only be Guyanese. I can be resident lots of places, but my navel string very in Buxton. So yeah, that's why, and also
Kojo, could you do like Nigel and come a little closer to your microphone? So right.
Okay, sorry about that. Is this better?
Yeah, that's much better.
Yeah, but let me just comment on a couple of points and develop a couple of points which were made, Selwyn. You know, in the diaspora challenges we face in Guyana is not fundamentally different from in any other country. Mm-hmm. And there will always only be a small proportion of people in the diaspora who will engage in the way that people like Rod and Neil have engaged. And so we need to be realistic when we talk about the diaspora going back. 99% of people will not go back, you know. So we have to, when we make our plans and set our expectations, they have to be in that context. The second thing is, it really relates to what Nigel spoke about. The issue about the system changing is critical because generally, unlike Singapore, which Rod referred to, there's a latent hostility in the system towards people in the diaspora, even though they need and utilize their resources as the coalition government did in order to get into power. There's a sense of distrust. There's a sense of you doing well. You know, why on earth are you coming back to tell us what to do anyway? The second thing is the third thing is from the diaspora perspective, we need to be more humble. You know, we need to understand that he who feels it knows it all, and we can't be sitting in relative comfort in New York or wherever and be expecting to set and drive policy. We need to follow. And this is where it's critical for there to be a clear visioning of what exactly is the Guyanese project. And the one critique which I'd like to support Nigel in making of the status quo is that hasn't been clearly enunciated. I don't think anyone can say these are the 3 key things which the current administration is looking to transform Guyana into. If they have, then I don't know of it, and I apologize. But that clarity of purpose which drove Singapore, that clarity of purpose which allowed Singaporeans to focus their energies and their ambitions around seems to be missing. And that must be a set of ambitions which don't change significantly with administrations. The how might change, the who might change, but we have to develop and rally around a clear set of long-term perspectives. Because the diaspora will not, if you live abroad, you have priorities which are different from priorities which are in Guyana. So in order to engage people, you have to be consistent, you have to be clear, and you got to be purposeful.
If Kojo, let me ask a provocative question here. If you were in a position to come up with 3 things, right? That's what we're here for, to offer solutions,
Yes.
offer ideas. What 3 you have readily available, you can think of right away that can make a difference?
Make it 3 what? Priorities for the country, or what the diaspora could do?
3 things you spoke about the change of government, and there must be some clarity of purpose. So 3 things that should be clear as to where the country is going, and so on and so forth. What 3 things you believe can be implemented?
Well, we're into dangerous territory because this becomes slightly political. But I think one of the things we have to do is really get away from this obsession with finding oil somewhere in the ocean. It will be way too expensive to exploit in a market where oil
Kojo,
doesn't make sense.
Kojo, your Wi-Fi went down. We're not hearing you clearly. We're not hearing you clearly right now. Nigel, can you take over that particular question by the time Kojo gets his Wi-Fi?
Well, I can't pretend to speak for Paris. They have been gifted.
No, speak for yourself. Speak for yourself, Mr. Hughes.
They have been. No. I agree with Kojo's analysis. I mean, the diaspora participation has to be driven by a national plan and vision. I call it Guyana. If you were to ask me what are the 3 key areas that we would need to look at, we started to flirt with this in the national development strategy. I think, first of all, we need to address the issues that have separated us since independence and before. So we have to come up with a constitutional structure that everybody signs on to, everybody's happy with, and that everybody's allowed to contribute to the development of Project Guyana. That's, we can discuss that, but that's relatively easy. Secondly, we need to identify a 20 to 25 year plan about where we see Guyana in 25 years, how we're going to achieve it, and what are our priorities. Agriculture may be one of them. I'm not persuaded that it is. But where are we going to be technologically? What are our goals? What are our goals for the next 20 years? How are we going to achieve it? Whether it's technology, whether it's agriculture, whether it's services. And given the population growth and given our geopolitical location, and given all the inflows that we will naturally benefit from, both in terms of population and investment, how we want to be able to protect Guyana so that the benefit of its resources come to the people of Guyana. So it's not just going to be a couple of individuals who necessarily get rich, but whether we have a policy that ensures that the general health care, the social services, and a model of development over the next 20 years that takes us from where we are now in the third world to first world. You can actually do it in much less than 20 years, but critical to that process is the involvement of all the major political players, because it's no point one side coming up with this plan, the other side doesn't sign on to it, and then everything gets turned upside down every time we go through an election cycle. I completely support the point Kojo made in that regard, and that we need to all sign on to this, and we can change administrations. I think 3 areas that we should sign off as political parties and agree to: education, health, and at least macroeconomic development objectives. If we can agree those across the political spectrum, and we can have arguments about how you achieve it and tweak it depending on who's elected, we're really going to be a far way ahead. We are a very minuscule population with an awful lot of resources, which we manage poorly. And the challenge, I think, for the next 10 years is that we will not manage it. Somebody else will manage it for us, and we won't get anything out of it. And that's a real danger, because you don't want to wake up 10 years post oil exploitation and discover that really and truly this has been the worst nightmare for the country. Even though we may relatives of the Caribbean be doing relatively well.
Now,